Are you or someone you know struggling with prison debt? Getting arrested and serving prison time can bring tremendous debt that ex-offenders simply cannot pay. If this is what you are dealing with, prison debt, help is available for you. We can show you ways to get your prison debt reduced or erased. Get help with your prison debt today. Space is limited. Register today.
Good afternoon. I am Ron Cuie and welcome to Prison Debt Solutions. You know, our show is really designed to generate conversation and chime in on the national dialogue when it comes down to criminal justice reform. It's a very hot issue, a very important issue in this nation today. And so today we're going to talk about this whole issue of legal financial obligations. That's what we're focused on primarily from our prior two shows, in case you missed us. And as a person, as I am, formerly incarcerated, so is my guest. We have come a long way since I think I was released in '03, so that's 15 years ago, and our guest is just about the same amount of time. But as we've looked on the landscape, we have both been committed to staying in this whole issue about reentry and criminal justice reform and adding to the national dialogue and making changes here in Philadelphia as much as we can within our power. So I want to take this next 30 minutes of our show to have a real exchange, a real natural dialogue with my guest. And he's here with us today. I want to introduce you to not only a guest, but his name is Jeff Bond, and he is also a very, very dear friend of mine. So I want to welcome Jeff to our show today. Jeff, good to see you.
Likewise, good to see you, Ryan.
Good to see you. Well, let me just get you to tell us generally about your point of view when it comes to this whole issue about legal financial obligations, reentry as they fit into criminal justice reform. Just kind of give the benefit of your experience, and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, as a formerly incarcerated person, and again, my name is Jeffery Bond, and as a formerly incarcerated person with the legal financial obligations of restitution, parole fees, urinalysis fees, I think really, to be honest with you, I think it's really criminal to ask a person coming from incarceration, you haven't even established yourself in society, doesn't have no employment, to pay money back to a system that you just came out of, and you don't have no finances.
Yeah.
And I believe that is unjust and unfair.
Yeah. And I think it's very, very tough. And as we get more into the dialogue, we'll talk about some of the outcomes and what are just downright penalties, monetary sanctions,
Yes.
that can be levied against a person who has not paid these fees, which, by the way, we don't know where these fees go to once they're paid. But we'll talk about that a little bit too. But in your work, Jeff, as a reentry senior support specialist with the Institute of Criminal Justice here in Philadelphia, tell us a little bit about what you do and just give us a little bit more background on what you've done since you've been out and how you got from, behind the bars to almost the boardroom in these days.
Yes. Well, I came home committed to staying free first and foremost, and I knew that I wanted to work in reentry. In fact, meeting you in prison as a peer facilitator, that's almost a model prisoner job, or just a job in prison where you can lead in groups and group sessions with supervision of a staff person. I knew when I came home that I wanted to continue to be involved with expanding opportunities for formerly incarcerated persons. So I hit the road running. I hit the road running. I attempted to get employed in that industry, but at that time, I found a lot of problems because people that was coming in prison would tell you that we need you in society, we want you, but once you come out, and my experience applied for employment, because most of those organizations was nonprofit and someone else was paying for the services, they determined who they would hire. And at that time, they wasn't hiring a lot of people who was returned citizens or formerly incarcerated people. So initially, I found some blockage there. So I went and got a job, and my initial job was at McDonald's,
Mm-hmm.
and then I got a job as a paratransit worker.
Now, you said your first job out was McDonald's.
Yes, after.
Now, I know you wasn't making $25, $30 an hour, but I know a lot of people say, well, when I was locked up before I hit the bricks, I was only getting 19 cents an hour.
Right.
So how did you feel about taking such a low wage in a job that really, what I know about your skill set, that was quite a ways below your skill set?
Yes, well, it actually bears on our subject, legal financial obligations, because being on parole, one of the things the parole man stresses to you, you had to pay your monthly parole fees, and you had to, at that time you didn't have to pay for your allowance, but you had to pay your monthly parole fees, and it was actually $30 for a person that didn't have a job, and it's like you're under a threat. If you don't pay that, you could be violated for parole and sent back to prison. So
the
Go ahead.
if you did not have that $30, you were threatened to be reincarcerated? Is that what you're saying?
yes, if you can be in violation of your parole. You sign a paper saying that you're going to obey and follow these rules and conditions of parole, and one of those conditions was to pay your fees, and they are monthly assessed fees. So hence, that's why I had to get the job at McDonald's, because after serving approximately 25 years,
Right.
I did not want to go back to prison.
So it was almost 25 years you did?
8 months short of 25 years, yes.
And then to come out clean. Now, I must say, Jeff and I were facilitators together. And I, to this day, have not seen someone who is more professional, an excellent teacher, educator, and communicator, to come out and take McDonald's job for a couple, $5, $7, $8 an hour.
Yes.
Okay. For the reasons that you indicated. If you didn't do that, you wouldn't have to be able to pay $30, and you'd wind up back in prison for the cost of like $45,000 a year.
Right.
Yeah. Make sense?
No.
No. I guess not.
It don't make sense.
I guess not. So go ahead. So you not only got the job at McDonald's, what else did you do to kind of work your way back into the mix?
Well, I wanted to get back to the community, so I got involved in my community, and I became involved in the Stenton Park Advisory Committee.
Okay.
And it actually is just by chance that the time that I got involved, they was having votings for positions for the structure of the committee. Okay. So, as you said, my qualifications, I ran for the president of the committee.
You went right for the top, yeah?
Yes, it was.
What
open.
about all the community politics and stuff like that? They didn't say, who's this guy coming? He's been locked up for 25 years, now he want to run everything.
I caught some flack from a few people from the community, but each person was running for the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. You had an opportunity to present your situation, so I was honest with them, let them know I came back. I was formerly incarcerated. I'm committed to making the community a better place, and that I'm not going to shortchange myself, or I'm not going to count myself out of anything, so I'm running for the presidency, and if you vote for me, you're going to have someone that's dedicated to this community.
Wow.
And subsequently, I was elected the president of that organization, but it's another part to that.
Well, if we got time, you can share that with us too. But I guess, in summing it up, you not only came back and did what you had to do, made the sacrifice to take a job that's way below your qualifications, an income that's way below what you are qualified to make, as I said.
Yes.
Paid money or go back to prison, paid $30 a month to make sure you had that money. Now, some people, Jeff, 'cause I had to pay that same $30.
Okay.
But some people would say, well, $30 a month, that ain't nothing. You make that in one day working anywhere at McDonald's too. How do you respond to that?
It sounds logical for a person who haven't experienced incarceration, because they don't understand the barriers that you face far as employment. You may not acquire a job to 6, 8, maybe even a year after your release from imprisonment.
Yeah.
Just because you had that criminal record, and at that time in Philadelphia, they could ask you that question: have you ever been convicted of a felony?
Right.
And once you tell the employer that, your interview stop,
Right.
your resume, your application.
Did you go through that personally?
It goes in the trash. I did. I actually was, I want to say, promised a job with a nonprofit organization, and I was forthright and truthful with them. And then when they went through the process, I guess the lady who was the director, when she went to the funders, they said no. And she called me in and told me I have to, sadly, I believe she said, sadly, I have to tell you something. We cannot hire you. And that's because of the barrier. And I had a violent crime. I was convicted of homicide.
Right.
So I had a violent crime. And that might have been played into that part as well.
I'm sure it did. Well, I too had a crime that involved violence. And I can tell you, sure, not only could I not get jobs, but my qualifications, people who would have been inclined to at least have a discussion,
Right.
they didn't want to talk to me, in my opinion, because I was an ex-offender.
Right.
But they used it, you're overqualified for this position. So it was, as they say, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right.
You know, you say I'm an ex-offender, that should shoot you down. You know, or they don't want to say that directly, then they say you're overqualified. But there was a lot, in other words, it was just the truthfulness that I approached employment with was not returned to me.
Right.
And as you know, Jeff, I was former deputy mayor
Yes.
in this, a deputy managing director in the city. I worked as an executive with Pepsi Cola. And I couldn't get any traction. And I mean, I even went, you know, like yourself, I went to the local Arco station, the convenience store, and I couldn't get no job. Why? Because they had no money, you know, and they didn't want you to have, because part of my criminal background was robbery as well. So they didn't want you to handle no cash for these things. So it really is, you are painted into a box, and then they come at you with these issues of legal financial obligations. All that in your face, now you got to worry about paying money.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, in my experience, I had to go, the first place I had to go to was the Criminal Justice Center to get the docket to see how many fines and fees and court costs I owed in restitution.
That's right.
That's the first place I had to go to and see how much money I owe the system. You know.
But not just to see, to set up a payment plan
Yeah.
for a person who haven't even gone to employment.
Yeah.
First place you go to the criminal justice to see what your fines and restitutions are,
Right.
and set up a payment plan, and you don't even have employment.
Right.
And I really, you know, that's ludicrous.
Yeah.
To me, that's ludicrous. The first place that they should be wanting a formerly incarcerated person to go to employment center, employment agency, or one of these reentry programs,
Right.
to where if they have adequate skills to be employed at that time, they can get employment. If not, they can get the necessary training to get employment.
Yeah.
Because as long as you keep them under them legal financial obligations, that debt will be paid, because, again, you have that threat over their head, and any reasonable person coming home from prison, they don't want to go back to prison.
Right, right.
So they're going to pay it.
So I came out in May of '03. That's 16 years ago.
Yes.
You came out, I think, '06?
'06, yes.
Okay, so you got 13 years out.
About 14, actually.
I want to know, how fresh are those experiences still in your head and in your spirit, even though you've been out, you're gainfully employed,
Yes.
you're involved in the community, you're a deacon at your church, deacon brother, I might say,
Yeah, amen,
one of my deacon brothers.
Yes, sir.
How fresh is it in your spirit, even today?
For me, it's very fresh, and it's very relevant because I work in reentry.
Okay.
Actually, as you introduced me, I'm a reentry senior support specialist. I work with men and women coming home from prison, so I have to deal with these issues every day, just about every day. So for me, it's fresh, and it's always seeking solutions to find some kind of just means in this situation, especially for people coming out of prison now.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that since beginning this show, I was actually in the process. I mean, I've done reentry work, and I know this issue personally, and we might get into that a little bit later. But I do know that this is one of the tougher issues to deal with, and particularly because it affects and impacts not only the individual trying to gain traction when they've come home,
Right.
but if you don't have that money, hey wifey, can you help me out? Hey girlfriend, can you help me out? Hey son, hey uncle, hey grandma. It puts pressure on all of the other family, and they don't want to see you reincarcerated.
Right.
So this is an issue of legal financial obligations, which not only affects the individual, but don't you think it impacts the family as well?
It definitely impacts the family because the family have a reasonable expectation that you're going to come home, you're going to get established, and you're going to take your rightful role as a father,
Yeah,
as
exactly.
a husband, as a head of the house, and take care of these things, not continually asking them for financial support. The same support they was giving you
Yes.
while you was in prison.
Exactly.
And then when you try to explain to them, well, I got these obligations to the parole board and I had to pay this money and I won't be here if I don't pay this money.
Yes.
You know, they don't understand that because they wasn't in prison and they thinking once you release, all of this
Everything's
stuff is
over.
behind you.
Right.
Everything is over.
Exactly.
But it's not. So to a certain degree, it is traumatizing as well.
Yeah. And then, you know, everybody's really fired up to help you when you get out. But you know, other people got their obligations. And I don't know about yourself, but me, I didn't have no wealthy people backing me up. I had people who were still just trying to make it from paycheck to paycheck. So, did you feel that too in terms of, you know, after a couple of weeks, you said, Jeff, I ain't got it this time. I ain't got it.
No, I actually, to be honest with you, I didn't have no wealthy people behind me, period.
Mm-hmm.
I had my immediate family, my mother, my father, my sisters, and my one brother.
Mm-hmm.
They would assist me as best they could.
Right.
But again, as I said earlier, I had to hit the ground running.
That's right.
Hence, that's why I took the job at McDonald's. Don't feel no regret or remorse about it because now I'm sitting where I'm sitting at now. I'm currently enrolled in Lancaster Bible Institute.
Oh, beautiful.
Working on getting my bachelor's degree in human services.
That's wonderful.
I don't have no regrets. No.
So I guess you can see that this is not an easy issue to deal with. And I want to speak to the audience listening right now. There are a lot of barriers that are well known. Everybody talks about employment, but this whole issue of legal financial obligations, it can keep you from housing, employment, and many other things. So we're going to get into that a little bit further here with Jeff as we go through the next portion of our show.
Are you or someone you know struggling with prison debt? Getting arrested and serving prison time can bring tremendous debt that ex-offenders simply cannot pay. If this is what you are dealing with, prison debt, help is available for you. We can show you ways to get your prison debt reduced or erased. Get help with your prison debt today. Space is limited. Register today.
Thanks for rejoining us. We're so happy that you've opted to come back and listen to the balance of our show. As I said before, we're here with not only my friend, but a real professional and a knowledgeable person on the issues around legal financial obligations, Jeffery Bond. Jeff, thanks again for being here with us.
Thanks for having
This is a segment of our show where we're going to go to our audience, to our viewing audience, and they've got some questions that they want to pose to us, and we'll do our best to give them an answer that will be helpful. So with that, we'll go to our first question.
Hey, how's it going, Ron and Jeff? So I actually heard that people are actually going back to prison for non-payment of legal financial obligations, or LFOs. Is this true? And if so, I want to know, what are we doing in order to help them fight in regards to being reincarcerated?
That's a good question. Jeff, you want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I just want to answer by saying, unfortunately, it is true. And it's a shame. People do go back to prison for not paying their legal financial obligations. And it's just unfortunate. But just thinking about the second part to your question, what can you do? As well as myself and yourself and others who's watching this show or in this audience, we can stay abreast of the issue of legal financial obligations. And one of the things we can do by staying abreast is to stay in contact with the Empowerment Center, with Mr. Cuie Empowerment Center, and see what's going on with the legal financial obligations and what part can we play in helping, you know, being an advocate. We may even want to contribute monetarily, you know, because it take money to make things work, but we can become advocates, we become informed and more educated on exactly the process of legal financial obligations, that we can help people and we can change the situation as it currently is.
That's good. I think, Jeff, you gave a very good answer, and we are here to help. I mean, you know, preferably we can deal with people before they're back in prison to do some preventative work, but we certainly are, as Jeff said, we're certainly here to help with the Empowerment Center, and we'll provide some information to you, again, on how you can get in touch with us. I think we have a second question from our audience, Jeff.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thanks for doing a show on this topic. Aren't there laws preventing individuals and families from being punished from just being too poor to pay these monetary sanctions that you're calling legal financial obligations, or LFOs?
That's a very good question, very important question, Jeff.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I agree it's very important as well. But again, unfortunately, as a person returning from society after period of incarceration, you're under a different set of standards, and actually you're under a contractual agreement with the parole board, and you actually have to sign that. So your signature on it, and your signature indicates that everything that's on there, including your fines and debts, your legal financial obligations, that you will adhere to the policies that the parole board set. If that means you have to give up, you have to pay $30 a month, $60 a month in parole fees and supervision, and then on top of that, you have a restitution attached to it. Let's say you was fined $50,000 and you had to go into a payment plan for that. You have to pay that. You have to get a payment plan and pay that, irregardless to what the laws is.
Yes.
To an ordinary citizen who had restitution that didn't have a criminal conviction on top of it.
That's true. One of the things, Jeff, as you know, right or wrong, people who have been incarcerated, you lose a sense of rights when you're out.
Yeah.
Two people, one incarcerated, one never been to prison, you know, that other person might get a break.
Yes.
But when you've been locked up, breaks are few, you know, very few and far in between
right.
Getting breaks. And I think you said something that's very key. Plan. Get ahead of these issues.
Yes.
I think we got one more question, Jeff.
Okay.
My wife has had a hard time paying her restitution. My family has to pay a lot of money each month, money that we don't have. It's almost like her and I are being punished for her crime after she's already done her time. What gives?
What gives, Jeff? That's good. I mean, that sounds like somebody who's at the end of their rope.
And it is like the family have to pay for the punishment of the other family member, because the punishment is just, sometimes the punishment doesn't fit the crime and it's hard. And we're talking about these legal financial obligations with the sanction of restitution, with paying parole supervision fees. And it can play on the families. And again, it can be traumatizing to family members who never had an issue with the criminal judicial system, because the other family member come out of prison, whether it's a male or female, they don't have any money because they're not employed yet.
Right.
But yet and still, you have to pay a fee every month, and you have to pay restitution every month, and you don't have no money, and you have to bear that pressure on your family members who have money. And then sometimes people be on disability.
Yes.
And the laws say that you don't have to pay any fines or restitution out of any kind of disability because it's not income. Disability is really not considered income.
Point.
You know, so it's good that the Empowerment Center is looking at this issue, because we definitely had to keep this issue on the burner.
Yeah.
On the burner.
And I'm glad that we had someone call in on behalf of their wife, in the sense of every time, let's be honest, most people think of people coming out of prison, they think of what? The man.
Right, yes.
This is an instance where a husband has a wife coming out. Thank God she's got a husband who's trying to be responsive. But an average woman coming out has two children too, so that's a very good one. So explain the type of support that a person like this might be able to get from an organization such as Institute for Criminal Justice.
Well, yes, for where I work at the Institute for Community Justice, as the support we can give in a person in this situation, because this is almost like a dire straight situation. Yeah. You come home from prison, you don't have no money, you're not employed, but yet you're under that pressure to pay fines and costs and restitutions. So what we do, we can support a family member by advocating on their behalf, writing to the judges, actually the sentencing judge, writing to the parole board, writing to even some government officials that, hey, this person can't afford this, and their criminal sentence shouldn't have them to the point that they're at a poverty level, or it makes them to become impoverished. And I think right now it's the best time in Philadelphia to have this issue on the table, because looking at the situation, if you're familiar with it, with Meek Mills coming out of prison, being on probation, you know, for a certain period of time, and it's lasting way beyond that. It's the same similar in this situation with these fines, costs, and restitutions. You serve your sentence,
Right.
and then you come home, and now you're obligated to this. You know, I think that we need to bear some pressure on our elected officials, and I think we need to get behind empowerment. I don't think we get behind this effort with the Empowerment Center and put this on the table for the city council and these local elected officials to take a look at.
That's
and if
right.
we had to take it nationally, then we take it nationally, because you can't punish people into poverty.
Very good point. Jeff, before we wrap up, and with the knowledge and wealth of information you have, in the last couple minute or two, anything that you want to add that you haven't already said before we close the show?
I just like to thank you for having me first and
Oh,
foremost.
thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This issue is real, it's relevant, it's in our communities, and we don't want the community to be traumatized. We don't want families to be traumatized. So we just have to get educated on these issues, do the best that we can, and just help educate one another. Whether you go to church or mosque or synagogue, educate them. You know, we cannot criminalize people into poverty, or have a person indebted all the way to the grave. It's not right. And another thing, just thinking about when Martha Stewart came home, she's not stigmatized with being called a criminal or an ex-con. She came right back as Martha Stewart, and this is the same reception that others should receive upon returning to society. And she's not under the threat of anything for fines, costs, and restitutions. You know, so I think that it should be fair across the board.
That's true. Well, being fair is something that we embrace, and one of the things we think in fairness, we want to be fair in terms of getting this information to our audience.
Yes.
And I want to thank you,
Thank
Jeff,
you
as
again.
a friend, as
No
a
problem.
true professional, consummate
Yes.
professional,
Thank
to
you.
come here and talk about this issue.
It's an honor.
We thank you, the listening audience, for being here with us today on Prison Debt Solutions. We want you to tune in again. We'll be back next week, same time, same channel. And we want to thank our guest again, Jeff Bond, for joining us today. Thank you all very much. And we'll see you next time on Prison Debt Solutions. For the lunch table,
No problem.
I need your attention on an important workshop called Prison Debt Solutions. If you, a loved one, or someone you just know and care about is facing debt that they can't pay to the criminal justice system, you need to attend the Prison Debt Solutions workshop. You'll receive legal solutions to put a halt to the criminalization of debt in your life or the life of loved ones. This workshop will deliver on how to drastically reduce fines, fees, restitution, and court costs that keep you from moving forward after having run-ins with the criminal justice system. Now consider these facts. Many courts routinely impose fines, fees, restitution, and court costs without even considering whether a person is able to pay them, and that is contrary to state law. This criminal justice debt can amount to a lifetime sentence. Secondly, people who are unable to pay can end up behind bars as a result of procedures that violate their rights. And the threat of incarceration forces poor people to choose between meeting their most basic needs and paying for these legal financial obligations, or as they're known, LFOs. The Prison Debt Solutions Workshop will help you learn the secrets, the ins and outs of criminal justice debt. Prison Debt Solutions Workshop will provide you with the legal statutes, how to fill out the necessary forms, how to file them, when and where to file them in court, and who to talk to and what to say when you talk to them. And when you leave Prison Debt Solutions Workshop, you'll know how to represent yourself in court, understand diversionary programs, and how to get costs waived after sentencing. You'll receive this and more. Now go to our website, prisondebt.com, for the time, date, and location. That's prisondebt.com. You don't want to miss this opportunity to take control of your freedom. We'll see you there.